Let me introduce a man that doesn't need any introduction, a man that works hard, a man that's got more energy than I have, and that's to say something. He is everywhere, does what he thinks is the right thing. He is really working hard, and we need to continue to give him our support. Let's give him a round of applause, Governor Pat McCrory.
Thank you all very much. Nothing like a zipper joke from the sheriff. Thank you all very much. I'll tell you, this sheriff, he is one of the best individuals, best public servants. Y'all need to give Donnie Harrison a round of applause. We love him. In fact, I'd like anyone who's in elected office, I want you to stand up right now. Anyone in elected office. Look at that. I want to thank y'all for your commitment and sacrifice. Former Janitor, County Commissioner, now Representative, it is an honor to have y'all here. You know, being a public servant is an honor and it's a privilege, but it's a heck of a lot of work on the family too. And these men and women who have decided to run for school board or county commission or city councils or state legislature or lieutenant governor or governor, it is a sacrifice, especially for their families, and it's a sacrifice in making a living. And you're on call 24 hours a day, and I'll never forget my second year as mayor, during my 14 years as a mayor, I got a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning one time. And those are the worst phone calls to get because I'm thinking a police officer may be shot or it's a family crisis. And they woke me up. And I woke up, picked up the phone, and I said, hello. And they said, is this Mayor McCrory? And I said, yes, it is. They said, well, our power just went out. And I was in the middle of watching a movie. And I said, and she said, I want my power back on so I can see how the movie ends. And I said, ma'am, what was the name of the movie? And she said, Titanic. And I said, the boat sinks. True story. I hung up. So I couldn't, it's a true story. But that's what these city council members and county commission and school board members, and when you run for office and you lose, which I've done before, it's a blow to your ego. You work, you put every bit of your passion in it. So anyone who's run for public office, I want to say thank you. Because you joined the club who, instead of just complaining about it, you decided to do something about it. And I admire everyone who runs for political office. And I also want to thank all those who help those run for political office. It was always amazed me when I was a city council member and mayor and now governor, and to see the hundreds of people who would go door to door, who would make phone calls, who would raise money. I'd go, what are you doing this for? And they'd return and say, what are you doing this for? So we each kind of have our calling in public service. And without the ground troops, without the grassroots, I wouldn't be governor today. I wouldn't be the 74th governor of the greatest state in the United States of America without the ground troops, and those are you right here in the Republican Party, right here in Wake County, and I want to thank you for just that. Now, the last time I spoke to you was over 2 years ago when I was honored to come into office. And at that point in time, North Carolina's unemployment was the 5th highest unemployment in the United States of America. This is our North Carolina was the 5th highest unemployment rate in the country. In addition to that, the previous administration owed the federal government $2.6 billion for unemployment compensation with no plan or no idea on how they're going to pay the federal government back, and that debt was climbing every month. And guess who owed the debt? You did. You did. And for some reason, I think they thought the federal government was going to forgive the debt. I don't think they should forgive any debt. I don't think anyone should forgive debt unless it's special circumstances. And that's not right. We should pay back our debt and have a plan to do it. So one of the first things we did working with our legislature is this. we decided to be the only state in the United States not to extend unemployment compensation. That does not poll well. The editorial page of the Raleigh News Observer didn't like that. They don't like much, but they definitely don't like that. But you know why we did it? First of all, we did it because we had job openings and we had people wanting jobs, and we needed to connect the two together. And if you have job openings, we want people to get those jobs. And sometimes, how many of you in this room have had to accept a job that you didn't like, but you knew you had to take a job to help your family? I have, right? So if there's a job opening, we all have a responsibility to take that job and become independent and learn a trade or learn whatever it takes to get back up on your feet again. It's part of my philosophy, which I think is a Republican philosophy, and that is one of my several rules that I laid out to my cabinet, and that is this, and I want you to remember this as Republicans. We have a responsibility to those who can't help themselves, but encourage those who can. Does that make sense? We have a responsibility to help those who can't help themselves, but encourage those who can. For example, I fought very hard in the last legislative session to keep Medicaid for Alzheimer's patients, because Alzheimer's patients can't help themselves, if you ever dealt with Alzheimer's. But we also agreed that we're going to cut off unemployment after a certain number of weeks because we want to encourage people to help themselves and take jobs that were currently open. Do you see the distinction? To me, that is a basic Republican philosophy. Let me tell you another philosophy that I gave my team when I came into office here in Raleigh, and that was this, that there's always new efficiencies and better ways to do things to save money and provide better customer service. No matter what you're doing, you can never stop looking for new efficiencies and better ways to deliver service. And government should be no exception. So I never believe in the adage, well, if it's not broken, you don't need to do anything. Because in this competitive world, whether you're in business or in government, you always need to look for better ways to do things. Because it's not our dollars, it's people living paycheck to paychecks dollars. And that's the way we ought to treat these dollars, as though it's our own money. And therefore, we ought to look at new ways to do efficient government. For example, right now, I'm working with the legislature. I looked at my budget the second year, and I recognized that we have $150 million a year being spent on workers' compensation. $150 million a year for workers' compensation of state employees. Now, there's several things I'm enacting now. First of all, are we doing the right training, and do we have the right policy in place to prevent accidents, right? Which all of you have to do in your own workplace. The second is, are we settling claims the right way and not getting ripped off on the settlement of claims? And the third thing is we're examining fraud now. How much fraud is there in workers' comp? Because this is your money. It's not my money. It's not their money. And that money is not being productive if anyone's using that money and not producing. We want to help those that are injured, but we also want to help those who can help themselves. And workers' comp is a perfect example that I'm stressing, because that money can be used for better purposes or be returned to your pockets, right? So we're going to look for efficiencies in workers' comp. Does that make sense? You have to do it as business people. We should do it as government leaders. Let me tell you a third philosophy I've enacted. And I've told you before, and I'll say it again. I'm a proud Eisenhower Republican. We don't talk about Dwight David Eisenhower enough. Not only was he a great Allied Supreme Commander, which helped win World War II, but I thought he was a great president. I was a very young man when he was president, and I recall when he passed away, but I was born while he was still president. But you know what he did? He was a Republican who believed that we do have a responsibility to invest in infrastructure. Infrastructure that is sustainable and long-term, not short-term stimulus packages where the money is gone. You borrow money and it's gone tomorrow for political purposes. I don't believe in that. But what Eisenhower did was connect the East with the West, the North with the South, cities with towns, the coast with the coast. I believe we in North Carolina must continue to invest in new roads and infrastructure for North Carolina, to continue the commerce, to allow the private sector to move their trade and products across the state. I am implementing a 25-year transportation plan for the state of North Carolina, very similar to what Jim Martin did when he was governor, very similar to what I did when I was mayor. Because these projects take so long, we are preparing the next generation. We ought to prepare for growth as opposed to anticipate instead of react to growth, because then we save taxpayers' dollars. So I've got to be real, I'm an Eisenhower Republican when it comes to infrastructure. So when we do invest your tax dollars, it will last and have an impact for generations to come, just like we're still feeling the positive effects that Eisenhower did with our highway programs across the nation in the 1950s, and generations are enjoying that today. Do you agree with that? I agree with that. That's my philosophy as a Republican. And two other things I'll briefly mention, then I'll get off the stage. But I need your help in several of these areas. One is, I want to continue to make North Carolina a job-friendly state, but not just a job-friendly state. I want to make North Carolina a career-friendly state, because people don't want to have just jobs. They want a career. They want a career. And what I want to do is make sure our regulatory bodies are not blocking potential jobs and job creators. I don't create the jobs. At times, we just get out of the way so the job creators can do the job. So I'm not saying I'm creating the jobs. I'm saying we're creating an environment for the private sector to step up and create jobs. And that's what we want to do for the entrepreneurs. That's what we want to do for mid-sized businesses and large businesses. We want North Carolina to be open for business and friendly for job creators and entrepreneurs and small businesses, because that's the backbone of North Carolina, is those industries that make things, that build things, that grow things, that innovate things. That's what made North Carolina great. And I think sometimes we gave up on industry like agriculture, gave up on manufacturing. I'll never give up on those industries, because those industries are the most sustainable and productive industries that build our country and continue to build North Carolina. And they're coming back to North Carolina as we speak. And that's my goal. And the last thing I'll talk about is, I don't mention just the word education. I mention trying to close the gap, the skills gap that we have now between education and commerce. And I'm hearing from employers across the state saying, I've got job openings, but I can't find people qualified to fill those jobs. Are any of you in business, do any of you, raise your hand if you see that to be the truth? I see a lot of hands going up. Where I have job openings and I need to find qualified people to fill those jobs. We see it with technicians, we see it with mechanics, we see it with engineers, we see it with medical, we see it with IT, we see it with accountants, we see it with math and science teachers. Well, if that's the case, shouldn't we adapt our educational programs to fill the commerce needs of North Carolina, whether it be K through 12 or community colleges or our universities? This is our tax dollars paying for it. Let's help people get jobs as opposed to just acquiring debt when they graduate. To me, these are 5 premises of a Republican philosophy that not only applies to Republicans, but applies to independents and Democrats, which will also continue our leadership in North Carolina. I'm honored to be the 74th governor. I hope I continue in office. I'm having a great time, except for a few odd circumstances. But Ann and I love living here in Wake County. It's an honor to live in, as Jim Martin said, the best public housing in North Carolina. Y'all come on by the house anytime. Just come to the gate and say 2 burgers and 2 fries and a diet drink, and they'll say, come through the drive-in window. That'll be $4. It is an honor to live in Wake County. It's an honor to be part of the neighborhood. I represent all of the state of North Carolina, and it is the best state in the United States of America. God bless each one of you. Thank you very much. Keep fighting. They're trying to get us. Keep the fight up, okay? They're coming from all over to fight us and to fight our progress. Fight them back. I'm going to do that as governor. Thank y'all.